Michelle Silverman Bedell from Silverson's Realty,
Leslie Jones, I'm an attorney.
and we're waiting for Maria Esposito from Citizens Bank. And today's topic is goals and priorities when buying and selling real estate from a buyer's perspective and a seller's perspective. And there's some overlap, but I think it's an important topic when you start working with a client. You really want to understand their goals and priorities. So while we're waiting, I'll just start and Leslie will chime in, and we could speak from a seller's point of view first. I think when you start working with a seller, I think their real priority is how much money, what's my net going to be, or how much money am I going to walk away from on the sale of this property. So their goal is obviously to maximize their profit and to get the most amount for their sale. With the least amount of aggravation, obviously. And also they want to know, their goal is, do I have to upgrade the house to sell it? And in order to sell. The other thing that they're really concerned about is the timing, right? How quickly, what's my timing on this? Like how many months do I need? How long will it take me to find another property where I'm moving to? So all of these things are very important to a seller. And they also want to know the market knowledge, and if they also want to know if they've done anything to the house, if they have a capital gains tax on it, right? So Leslie can sort of speak about that, and from a seller's perspective.
So basically, everyone's going to look at what their expenses are, and it may be also that if you move out of state, there is also withholding. New York State wants to capture that money, so you want to make sure that you understand what you have to withhold for New York State, and any capital gains. And so you have to look at how much improvements and have an idea of what improvements you put into the house, so you can get a sense of how much you're going to walk away with ultimately, or whether if it's an investment property, you want to put it into some other property, so that you could, by way of a 1031 exchange, which may make sense in certain cases, so that you don't have a gain at that point. At some point, you're going to have a gain, but if you want to put off the gain, you can do that with a 1031 exchange, which is a pretty simple process as well.
Right.
So that's something to look at also. There's timelines that you have to be aware of, which we can help you with if need be. So that would be some other way of handling this, handling a gain.
Okay. I think on the buy side, we're still waiting for Marie to come. Possibly she's on the call with a client, but we're going to try to connect with her again and see where she is. From a buyer's perspective, when I start working with a buyer, I wanted, we really discuss their priorities and their goals. So one of their biggest goals is how long will they be in the property for? Are they looking for a short-term investment or a short-term purchase? Is it 5 years, 3 years, 10 years plus? Really, that will really determine how large of a house they're getting, if they need it for how many children, are the children older, are they younger? So we really want to know their goals in terms of how long they want to stay in the property. The other goal would be, are they buying it for an investment? Very often clients of mine tell me they're looking for a multifamily, or they're looking for just an investment property, and they're trying to accumulate some investment properties. So this would be another goal that one should know in terms of when you're working with a buyer. In addition, you want to know where their location is. Location is very important to a buyer, right? So for many different reasons, it could be that they want to be close to a train. It could be that they want to be walking distance to stores or close to schools, or they have to be in a specific school district. So these are different goals and priorities that you really have to know when you're working with a buyer. And obviously their budget is very important, and how much they can afford, and are they willing to do work? Are they willing to buy a house ready-made, where they are walk-in ready, move-in ready? They really need to know. You need to know when you're working with a buyer all these different factors.
And just also understanding what the closing costs are, so that, and speaking to a mortgage professional, which Maria can certainly help with, figuring out what you qualify for, which it's always important to speak to a mortgage person to get a sense of what your qualification is before you really get out there in the market. Because if you look at something and you're way overextended and you're not going to qualify, it's kind of a waste of everyone's time. So you want to make sure you know what the closing costs are, what the title costs are, and any mortgage person or professional can give you an idea as to what those are ahead of time, and that's important before you even start the process. And I would imagine Maria can sort of
We don't
give
know
us
what she
the
needs.
give us that piece of information. She'd be the expert on that.
Right, we're going to try to connect with her another time. Maybe something happened to the connection. I think another thing to be concerned about when you're looking to buy a property, obviously, are the financing options out there and whether you're going to pay cash or not. So these are different priorities that some buyers have because some people are very conscious, especially today, especially the interest rates went up again today. They're very conscious of their budget and how much they can afford, and that will vary depending on the interest rate. And that's why it's very important when you're working, when you're buying a property, to make sure you have a very updated and recent pre-approval.
And also to have all your proof of funds. That's I think everyone, every seller is going to want to see proof of funds and make sure that you really have what you say you have. So typically that's asked for. You can always redact any information, meaning, you know, any personal accounts, so that you're not passing off any information that you shouldn't. So I do recommend doing that, but having it all ready to go, because everything moves very, very quickly, and you have to have your funds available, move them out of, you know, whatever investment accounts you have if you're getting close to a purchase, because everyone wants you to move at lightning speed.
Right. Today I was just told in a transaction that the buyer's money is not as liquid as they thought, and we have to wait instead of they sign the contract, instead of it being ready today, it'll be ready available to them on Tuesday. So this is something, as you said, as Leslie said, that we really have to be very aware of. I also think that from a buyer's perspective, when you're working with a buyer, you have to really know how much the work they're willing to do. You want to know the style that they want in a house, the amount of land, and are they willing to do work to that house? As I said before, these are factors that you really want to hone in on when you start working with a buyer.
Agreed. But definitely the style would be more on your end.
Right.
And but definitely what we look at is also like, as far as like legalization and things like that, you know, COs, whether you're willing to take on something. Sometimes people aren't willing to do certain things, you know, and you have to be willing. Okay, if the basement's not legal, am I willing to legalize it? How much is that going to cost? The deck is not really up to code. How much is that going to be? Or, you know, and whether you're willing to take on a little more risk in getting those things done, because you don't know if the basements can be legalized or not based on ceiling height and things like that. So there are things to look at that maybe make sense to evaluate before you jump in.
And I think that goes, that's a good point. So even when you're selling a home, you want to make sure all your permits are closed. I mean, I even know for myself or other people I know that work was done, let's say 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and the contractor forgot to close out a permit. So when you're selling a house, you want to make sure that you take it upon yourself to check with your local building department or assessor's office to make sure that all the permits or any work that was done, make sure that they closed out the permits, because very often the contractors, they're busy or they filed the permits, but they forgot to close it out. So even one small part, maybe an electrical permit, was not closed out, and this will come up. So it's something you really want to stay on top of as a seller when you are thinking of selling.
I actually had that come up a few weeks ago, and I'm waiting for the permits to be closed, and now we have to carry the house for an extra. My client has to carry the house an extra month that she wasn't planning on. So the sooner you find that stuff out, the better.
I think, and one last thing, whether you're buying and selling, I think it's really important, especially today, to really have a handle on the market and the market knowledge. You know, you really want to know, is it a transitional market? It's been a strong seller's market, at least in the suburban markets, for God, since COVID, and it keeps getting stronger. Although because of the interest rates, we are seeing a leveling off in terms of there aren't as many buyers as maybe there were a year ago in the market, but it's definitely something as a buyer or seller, you really should have a handle and really understand the market conditions.
And also jumping in at the right time, jumping in, during like the spring market, at least in the suburbs where people want to get into the school district. It's important that this is the best timeline to jump in where people are really motivated
Right.
to purchase.
Right. And I also think that I want to say one other point from a buyer's perspective, when buyers are coming, we really want to know, like many of the clients of mine are coming from the city and they choose to rent for a year just to test out the community or get a sense of the community. So that's something that you would want to discuss with your client. And many clients of mine who are moving from the city, they're not quite sure which area they want to move in. So maybe they'll test one out for a year or so, or even 6 months, just to get a feel and a flavor of that community.
It's a good idea.
Right? It's a good idea. You don't want to make a big mistake. You know, buying a house is not like you can't return it so easily, right? You can't. It's not like buying a dress or a suit in a department store, so or online where you could easily return it. So, having said all this, I don't know what happened to Maria. She'll definitely join us next week, and we wish everybody a nice weekend and happy holidays. And we look forward to seeing you next Friday. Have a great weekend.
Have a nice weekend.
Bye bye.